Hello guys and welcome back to this new video. Today we are going to talk about this episode about like pierced and happy. And what do we mean by that? We mean literally that we're gonna go through the history of piercings and the significance, the moral, ethical, religious significance of piercing oneself, but also how this trend of piercing oneself has been developed. So we could start off by recounting the fact that one man preserved in an ice block has been observed having stretched lobe ears, and what that means is probably that he was wearing earrings. And so this idea, this understanding of piercing one's earring or one's earrings has been traced back to a very, very old time. We also know that the sailors would have earrings, and these earrings would pay for the funeral had things gone completely wrong, and so it would preserve them, so to speak, by demons of the sea. That is, if they had the actual luck of surviving the sea and the various possible sea storms. The tradition of piercing oneself, though, has very ancient and old roots. It is possible, indeed, to imagine, for example, that all the tribes, all the primitive tribes, they do maintain this tradition of having piercings all around their body. For instance, the Yanomami tribe that live in the area of Brazil, which is an area of interest for gold seekers, they whose life is very endangered, they still have that kind of tradition, and the same is true for African tribes. A great example of that would be the tribe of Nuba. The Nuba's tribe, Nubians are this group that lives in Sudan, and they have a whole tradition of painting their own body and piercing their face or parts of their body. And there has been several coerced attempts to integrate this society, this group, into the civilized society, so to speak. They all have failed. So let's start off from the ancient Egyptians, telling you guys the history, the overall history of piercings. And one thing that I do want to say is that they have a long tradition. So today we are going to start from the ancient Egyptians. In their society, you guys had Egyptians wearing piercings to their navels and also to their earrings. And that is important to notice, also because no layman, no common person could wear piercings, but only royal members. Another important element that I've discovered in my research was that the ancient Romans took up the tradition or the habit of having piercings, but this time around the piercings were to their nipples, which is quite an interesting tradition. Those piercings would underscore the loyalty of a soldier to the Roman Empire. The ancient Aztec, on the contrary, used a different type of piercing. This time around, we encounter a society where lip plate is very, very important and is so widespread. Lip plate is something that we see to this date in some African societies, mostly, and it's indeed like a plate that gets inserted, and it's long and big one actually, that gets inserted in the lips, right? So that the entire part of the mouth gets trapped in this or trapped by this plate that allows or doesn't allow so much the movement, right? And it involves somehow a form of mutilation, but still extremely fascinating. The Aztecs, they were using a lip plate that were in jade or gold. So from Aztecs to the Renaissance, where men were wearing like this small but at the same time quite big studs for the time, very flamboyant, and so very flashy, but they were indicating either the social status or they were anyway a symptom of wealth, and therefore they could be used for wealth, they could be used for getting married, so they served a wide array of purposes. All traditions, anyway, are very different from this woman that you see in the picture right now. She is Elaine Davidson, originally from Brazil, but living in Scotland, perhaps married and divorced. She is the true nightmare of metal detectors, with over 3 kilograms of piercings, all sparse in all over her body, and also like in her private parts. And so this is interesting, but also like, why would you do that? That's kind of unclear to me. But anyway, let's move on and let's go to a different section of this video. So now we're going to enter a new stage of this video where we discuss the 3 specific traditions. So the first tradition is quite different from the piercings that we have just recounted. It is quite an interesting tradition because we see for the first time this kind of thing, which is again more religious and way more symbolic than what piercings could be ever. And this tradition is that of a vegetarian festival held in Phuket, actually held in Phuket every single year, where like men specifically have these huge needles that pierce their flesh, pierce their mouth, and those needles are supposed to keep the devil and the evil spirits they know away from them. So, as we can easily imagine, this tradition is not quite the same of that of piercing oneself in the area of the nose, or just have earrings or things like that, because nose or lobe ears could be like delicate areas where the flesh is more thin, when there is no muscle, and so it's easy. But this picture right here shows you exactly how thick those needles are and what would be the understanding here. This is important because this is not the only tradition, and it's not even the most violent one. There is another one known as Okipa. Now, I don't know how much right now it is practiced, and I also don't honestly know how much it was practiced in the past. It can be traced back to Native Americans, and it's this tradition of being hooked with the chest, or with the upper part of the back, so the shoulders basically, through hooks And of course it requires some sort of state of trance where of course pain can be made tolerable, and there's a long night with a couple of people that are hooked and hanging up in the air, which is again not my idea of fun. So but there is this tradition. It is also said that these men, they were painted before being hooked up, but yes, so we don't know that for sure. Whereas we could go to this second image that represents a different tradition, an Indian tradition, a tradition that we know more of or about, and that is the so-called Kavadi Attam. Now, let's explain this. So there's a legend, and the legend says that one day Lord Shiva gave to his disciple Agashta the job of, or the task rather, to put two heels on top of his shoulders and then locate those two heels in a certain place. So Agashta goes and I think he's busy or something, and goes to Indenbaum and asks Indenbaum, which is his disciple, to do that for him. Now, Indenbaum decided, sure, I could do this. So also, it doesn't really have that much of a choice. Therefore, he starts traveling. So he travels and travels and travels, and at a certain point he is very, very close to the final destination, but he sees a fountain, a body of water, decides to stop. Let's take a step back. The orders that Shiva had given Agashta, and therefore Agashta in the baum, the orders were very specific. Do not stop. Go straight to the place, to the destination, and put there the two heels. Yet Indenbaum stops and decides to drink some water. At this point, he is well rested and decided to then pick the heels back and put them like on his shoulders, but he couldn't. The heels had become suddenly way so heavy for him to put them on his shoulder, and he doesn't understand exactly what is going on. So he raises his head, thinking, how I'm gonna do this, and he sees at the top of at least one of the two hills a child. Now he does not recognize the child, so he starts fighting with the child for quite some time. According to some legend, the child also kills and then brings back to life Indenbaum, and then he understands that the child is actually Lord Murugana, meaning, in other words, the son of Shiva. At this point, what happens is that Indenbaum, as we said, dies and then is brought back to life, and then that a temple is built on the hill to celebrate Lord Muruga, and that is the award that Lord Shiva gives to Muruga and Indenbaum for the job done, right? So the tradition of the Kavadi Attam is a very peculiar tradition where these people walk for a very long time, and then in the end they also climb up 272 steps, and the understanding here is that they do all of that just with well, first of all barefoot, and also on top of their of them. So basically, they hold a structure, and this structure is made with needles that penetrates their chest and their back. Now, this tradition is not easy at all for devotees. First of all, because the weight could be really impressive. Besides all the needles that cross the back and the chest, though everybody decides kind of like what kind of weight to wear, there's always some struggle that they have to endure. For that, it is said that they prep, and they prepare themselves in a rigid way. That is, by eating only certain food, by meditating, by sleeping on a mat, by not having sex, and they possibly reach states of trance where, like, they can afford to be able to do all of this in one day, which is hugely impressive. And then ask for a favor. Ask for a favor to Muruga, to Lord Muruga. Another interesting aspect of this is the fact that they use burning ashes to actually close the holes of those needles, which is interesting. It is said that no scar remains on the body, which would be unthinkable for me, but that is what it is said about these sorts of traditions. So, guys, with today's traditions of the Thai festival, the Okipa celebration, and the tradition of the Kavadi Attam, we are done for this episode. But you guys are just starting. Let me know, comment below, first of all, what you think of those traditions. Let me know if you ever would be willing to do any of that, and if you have done it, let me know if there is something that is missing in my recount of these traditions. But most of all, I want you to tell me what you think about piercings, if you have any, what you do have piercings, and so on and so forth. So don't forget to comment below, and actually let me know what you think about all of this. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and comment, leave a thumbs up, click like on the video if you really have liked the video, and then that's it basically. So do whatever you can to help and support the channel. I thank you for your patience and for bearing with me, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.